that the Greek people will stand up for themselves, and not just for themselves, but for the people here in Ireland as well, for the people from the Right to Water campaign, because it's all part of that. It's all part of the big picture. What happens in Europe affects us here. This debt that they talk about, that Greece has, and I think it's important to mention that, because the rich and powerful are somehow trying to tell us here in Ireland that some of this debt is owed to the Irish. It is not. The European Commission created a lot of money that they printed, gave it to Europe, and then said, right, we're going to lend that money to Greece, and we're going to tell the Greeks that some of it came from the Irish. And what do the Greeks have to do with it? They have to pay it back to the Europeans again. And then when they pay it back to the Europeans again, they have to pay it a second time, because now they owe them that money as well. And this cycle of debt continues and continues and continues. It's all just on paper. None of it exists in reality. And it's all for to try and hoodwink the people of Europe into believing that somehow or other they should be grateful for the rich and the powerful. That if we don't do their bidding, that there won't be any money in the pass machine. Or that we won't have our pensions. Or that we won't have education for our children. Unfortunately, the measures that they are imposing on many of the people both here in Ireland, in Greece and in other parts of Europe is making that a reality anyway. They're withdrawing services all over the place. Yesterday, Sinn Fein launched a campaign that a fair recovery is possible. And there was a number of things central to that campaign, and one of them was decent wages for decent work. And it's amazing that here, in 2015, 102 years ago, after the lockout of 1913, that we're still talking about people getting a decent wage for a decent day's work. It's also about providing adequate services for people, about ensuring that we have adequate services for people all over our country, not just in Dublin, but in other regions as well, like the cancer services in Sligo, like services for home health for our elderly when they're recovering for illnesses. All of these things are being withdrawn all the time, and there's no money for them. But if the Troika says that you owe us an extra billion, they'll find that and give it to them straight away. And that, I suppose, is the challenge that we have today. We have a responsibility to ensure that we stand up for a different Ireland. As I said in the outset, nobody has to lose their lives like Michael J. Marren. But we have to work together to make it happen. We have to support groups and organisations, and indeed Sinn Féin is delighted to be part of, along with many other progressive forces in Ireland, in the Anti-Austerity Alliance, the People Before Profit, and many of the trade unions, etc., in the Right to Water campaign. Because the Right to Water campaign isn't just about water. It's about many other things as well. It's about the withdrawal of services. It's about the downtrodden people of Ireland being forced to pay for the sins of the bankers. And that has to come to an end. Our MEP, Lynn Boylan, recently got I forget the exact terms or the name for it, but it was a what was it called? A European directive, or a European piece of legislation anyway, before the Environment Committee in Europe, which basically said that water as a natural resource was something that belonged to the people and could not be privatised. Because it's not like any other natural resource. If there's gold in them hills out there, it doesn't matter whether we get them out of them or not. Nobody's going to live or die as a consequence of it. But if you don't have water, people die. So it's a resource that people need, that must have. And that kind of a resource should not be allowed to be privatised or to be bought and sold like a commodity. And that's what we want to ensure does not happen. And the European Environmental Committee accepted that, because it got over 2 million signatures across Europe looking for it. A fair recovery is something that everybody wants, and we're told that we're in recovery. We don't see a recovery in this part of the world, and certainly most of the people that I know that have their children in Australia and Canada and other places around the globe, because there's nothing here for them, they don't see a recovery. The recovery is for a select few at the top. The recovery are for those in the capital markets that buy and sell and trade in capital. In 2014, there was over 30% return on capital. So if you were lucky enough to have 5 or 10 million to invest in the markets and knew how to do it, you could make 30 or 40%. While at the same time, the ordinary worker out there, whatever they're doing, the people working in A&Es in our hospitals, they got pay cuts. That's what austerity is doing. That's the difference that's happening. Many years ago, and so I always think of it when I talk about immigration, I remember watching a little documentary. There was an Irish Republican and socialist from Donegal called Peadar O'Donnell, and he'd been interviewed, and they said to him, you know, I forget, but when elections come, people make promises, and they promise this, and they promise that, and they promise the other. And the only thing I think we in Sinn Féin should be promising is that we should promise that we will be fearless, that we will not be bought off, that we will not be intimidated, that we will stand with the people. And we will do our very best to make sure that the people's rights are upheld. Not the rights of the rich, not the rights of those who think they are better than us, but that the ordinary people can trust us. And I think that's what we see in Greece with Syriza. The ordinary people on the ground know that their government is working for them. And there's very few other places in Europe in the present day when the ordinary people look around that they believe that their government is working for them. And that's the promise that we have to make to the people of Ireland. That we will be fearless. That we will stand up and fight for them the way Michael Marren fought for them. And that we won't be bought off, we won't be intimidated, and that we will deliver for the ordinary people. Gorma Hiva Cordial.